Peace and blessings be upon you. Thank you so much for that introduction, Brother Wesley.
How much did you pay?
You heard nothing. I got a very good deal. I've had the honor of meeting some of you previously, and for others, this will be our first introduction. Everyone can hear me okay? Everyone can hear me okay now? Okay. So as Brother Majdi introduced me, my name is Hareem Ahmed, and I moved to Portland about a year and a half ago now. And like he said, I moved here because I'm a competitive fencer. And before I go any further, because I can already see some confused looks in the audience, I brought some visuals.
Okay.
Fencing happens to be one of the oldest Olympic sports. It's one of the 4 sports that's been in every modern Olympics, as a matter of fact. And maybe once I show you, in Arabic they call it mubaraza, in Persian, Urdu they call it shamshir zani. My mother personally likes to call it sword fighting. But it's the sport with masks and sabers, basically. And when I came to Portland and I introduced myself to people, and they asked me, if I came from New York, what I moved out here for, I would tell them fencing. I got a lot of different reactions. Particularly, most people, especially in our community, would ask, well, did you get married to come out here? Did you get a job to come out here? And I would say, no, actually, I moved out here without a job. Actually, I'm not married. I came out here because I'm a competitive fencer, because the national coach is here, and I left my job to come train with him. And they asked me, well, did you go to school? And I said, well, yeah, I did go to school. Well, where'd you go? And I told them I went to MIT. And see, that really throws people off. Because if you look at, if there's anything I've done in my life, which I ought to be proud of, I can say, I did go to a good school and I became a fencer. But it's not the fact that I was a good athlete and I went to a good school that throws people off. It's the combination of the two, and more than the combination, it's the order. Because I went to a good school, and then I got a good job, a job that, which was not only lucrative, but I had a lot of social validation. People thought I should be very proud of that job. And then I chose to leave and become an athlete. So what I want to emphasize here really is that it's about context. For me, contextually, for some people actually, contextually getting into MIT and getting to go there is the culmination of a lifetime's worth of dreams and efforts, and then they have that experience to draw upon for the rest of their lives as sort of this universe of insight because they worked so hard to get there. And I can tell you honestly, for me, that was not the case. So if someone here heard that I went to MIT and they came here hoping that I could teach their kids how to get into MIT, that's unfortunately not the talk I came to give. I got into MIT because I was very blessed in a lot of ways. I had parents that were very focused on education, and they made sure I got a very good one. I had a lot of advantages in that way, and luckily for me, I also had a natural aptitude for a lot of the subjects I was studying, and I did well. And I had a lot of encouragement, and at every turn I was told that I could do it, I should do it, and I was going to be successful. And then, with the grace of Allah, I was. And which is not to downplay the fact that it is a very good school, and there was a lot of people that worked very hard to get there. But for me, the path was made easy. Not that it was an easy path, but it was made easy. And, to the extent that when I got in, I told my father, I don't really think I'm going to fit into MIT, so I don't think I'm going to go. And he looks at me and he said, Beta, you got into MIT. You can't not go. So I did. Off I went. And then it was at MIT that I found fencing. Now, I had known fencing existed. I actually had really wanted to try it, and I had tried it a little bit because I had a cousin, and he had gone to a public high school in New Jersey, and they had it in his public high school. And when I heard of that, I thought, that's just the best thing. That sounds so amazing. I'm going to try it. Now, I had actually never really played sports before. I grew up in a pretty traditional household where we didn't play sports. It's easy for maybe for some of you to see that, I'm a competitive athlete, I've worked so hard to become a competitive athlete, and say, that's great that her parents encouraged that from an early age. Actually, they didn't. And I came from a house which is actually maybe more restrictive than a lot of houses, even in this community, where, we weren't really allowed to play outside more than once, maybe twice a week. Because, if you're a girl and then you play outside too much, you'll get dark, neighbors will talk, their kids are always outside all the time, and then, as is the case with anything in our community, then you won't get married and that would be the end of your life. So, long story short, there's no playing outside. Come inside, hit the books. And that was my life, and I don't have any criticisms of that because clearly my parents did manage to do something for me that has been huge for me in my life. I mean, going to MIT opened so many doors, and I learned a lot from it, and it was wonderful. But that's just the paradigm in which I was raised. So, but here I was now. I was at MIT, and I was thinking, wow, this sport sounds really cool. This is the first thing I'm going to do, and it was. I got there, and I tried out for the team, and I was terrible, but because it's a small enough sport, it's obscure, they take a lot of walk-ons, so they took me on. And the other interesting thing about fencing is that since it is a smaller sport, I would say the bulk of most college fencing teams are made up by like high school fencers, people that learned to fence, and they fenced for 3 years or 4 years in high school, and they went off to college and they kept doing it. And then you have some walk-ons, and then you will have 1 or 2 or 3 elite athletes, kids that have been doing it since they were 8 or 9 years old and have competed nationally and internationally and have just achieved so many amazing things. And for me, it was the first time I had ever come into contact with such people. I mean, I'd heard they existed before that, but they were basically aliens to me. I'd never really known any athletes, nor had I ever really been in a situation with them where I could see how they got to where they did. I just knew that they did, and I thought it was something awesome and completely foreign. But now I'm on this team with them, and I start getting encouragement that since I clearly really liked fencing, that I should go and I should try competing at local tournaments. And my first reaction was just to laugh and to say, that's not me, I couldn't do that. But with a lot of encouragement from teammates, from my coach, I did. I started going to local competitions, and because I was an 18-year-old and I had just started, most of the kids who were at the competitions I went to were maybe 10 years old or 12 years old or 13 years old. They weren't any better than me, but they were a lot shorter. But as I started going to these, I realized, all of these kids, they have dreams of going and competing at a higher level than this, at getting better, at competing at regional and local and international competitions. And if they're not any better than me and they can dream it, I can dream it. Sure, I'm a little older, but why not? Why not see how far I can go? So and that's when a little sort of seed was planted in my mind of, well, let's just see. So I kept training, and before long, I managed to go to a national competitions at a lower level, at like the Division III, Division II level, and I managed to get some national medals, and it was amazing. But of course, there were ups and downs during this period. It was tough. Everyone was younger than me. I had so many other things going on in my life, but at the same time, I was able to balance it. I really liked it, so I did. And so my life continued. I graduated MIT, and I got a job on Wall Street, which again was not that exceptional, because when you go to MIT and you do finance, most people, actually, even if you don't do finance, most people will go to Wall Street. That's where the money is. That's where it's just what you do. And I did, and I was able to keep training and competing. And then in 2010, I made the senior ranking list for the first time, and up until now, the only time. So I ended up, ranked 40-something in the country, 47th or something like that. And then I guess it was right around that time that I made that choice between what was my budding financial career and fencing, because up until that point, I had kept taking the next steps that were expected of me and doing this thing which I liked. But 2 factors really helped me break from that path and choose what I love to do. And the first one is what I said. One, I really loved it. And the other thing was that at some point between being raised as a pretty good Pakistani girl whose chief skills in life were reading, math, and hosting family functions, I had become empowered to choose fencing, to choose sports. So, again, to come back to it, even though I had been on Wall Street, I kept fencing. No one's going to pay me for it, but I kept doing it because I loved it. And there was no reason not to. It was the first thing that I had done when I got to college, that had been just for me, not because it was expected of me, not because I should do it, but just because I thought it would be cool. There was no reason not to, and I really, really found myself enjoying it. And not only enjoying it, but once I was, working, I made serious sacrifices for it. Even though I was on Wall Street and I was training, I was constantly running out of money because I was spending it all on fencing and training. There was one particular point in time where the coach I had been working with left and moved to a different state, so I started working with a coach in New Jersey when I was living in New York City, which basically meant that after work I would get on a train and then switch to another train, and after an hour and a half of being on trains, walk 20 minutes from the station, this is going to sound a little exaggerated, in a foot of snow, to get to this fencing club where this coach was, and sometimes it would be 8 o'clock at night by this point and everyone would be gone, so I would take a 20-minute lesson and I would go back. But at that point, I didn't have anything really better to do with my life. This was the one part of my day I really enjoyed, so I just kept doing it. And it was actually upon hearing that particular story that the current assistant coach at the Oregon Fencing Alliance, where I train, his name is Adam Skarlankevich, he heard that story and he told me, girl, you're crazy, but if you're that crazy about fencing, you need to move to Portland. Portland has some of the best fencing in the world. Actually, fencers from all over the world come here to train. People actually from all over the country come here to train and move here to train, and not just me. But I never seen myself making that choice because I never thought, well, why would the national coach want to work with me? But again, a seed was planted, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, why not? Because what am I getting out of my life right now? I have a good job, and people really respect it, but I'm not enjoying it. I'm working and I'm fencing, and honestly, I could be doing that somewhere else. Or at least I can, if nothing else, I can try doing it somewhere else. I was pretty young. I wasn't even 23 years old at this point. I'd been working for almost 2 years, and I thought, well, even if everything fails, I can just stop and start right over. I had colleagues that started after their MBA when they were 30, and I thought, all right, well, that gives me a good 7 years to waste. If it's a complete waste, I have 7 years to waste, so why not? And the last thing was, even if I didn't feel like I could do it or should do it, someone else did. And that encouragement from that coach, from Adam, and from my other coaches was, you can do it. You are going to get better, and if you want it and you work at it, it can happen. Anything you want can happen. And when you hear that message every single day, even if you want to shut it out, you can't. And for the person giving me that message, it wasn't anything unusual. That's what they told everybody because they really believed it. But for me, in the context of my life, this message was totally new. I mean, of course, I'd had it in some ways. I was told I could do anything in the education arena, but not so much everywhere else. And when I started to understand that actually with fencing, maybe I'll never win every medal that's out there, but actually I can get much better, and I can try to go as far as I want, and I'll definitely get part of the way there at least. Well, it really broke down a lot of mental barriers in my head about my own limitations. And then see, once I had this message, I realized I can't just keep this message to myself. I have to try to share it with as many people as I can. And that's when I made the decision that I really want to fence for Pakistan, because if I hadn't gotten lucky in some ways, if I hadn't found fencing, if I hadn't found good coaches, I may have never realized that there's so many boundaries in my life that are artificial, that there is so much I can do and can achieve, and all someone has to do is tell me that it's possible. And if that's all I need to do to help someone become the next great leader, then I have a responsibility to go out and try to share that message with other people. And when it comes to Pakistan, well, that's where I'm from, and I think that it's a culture where that message is really needed. So, as Brother Waishi mentioned, I have been working with Pakistan for the last year or so to try to get them, as they don't have an officially recognized fencing federation, to try to get them an officially recognized fencing federation so I can represent them internationally, and that's something it's still in progress. It's a bureaucratic country. These things take time. But The other thing that he hasn't mentioned is that we also want to try to start a weekend program at the school, so that if I'm talking about change and I'm talking about empowering our youth, it has to start with our own communities. It has to start for me here. So that's something that that's a project I'm really looking forward to. And then this message is taught very effectively through sports, and that's the reason I'm such a big advocate for sports, because it's so human to want to win. It's like we'd have to be dead to show up at some sort of competitive game and not have this urge to be the one that wins. Nobody likes losing. It's very natural. And then when you're in that environment every day, you have to come in with the idea of, well, how can I get better? What can I do to get better? And it really teaches you to start setting goals and working towards them. So, to come back to for a second about kind of the challenges, and some of the challenges facing our communities, and why I think this message is so important is because if you look at our community, it's a community that's made up largely of immigrants, and that's a very powerful thing because it's a very courageous thing to come here and leave everything you know at the chance of a better life. But at the same time, and I can only really speak to my own experience here, my parents came from a culture that was extremely homogenous. So, they came here, there's a whole multitude of influences, and they know kind of how to conduct themselves, they know what they want because they've grown up with a certain paradigm, and they know kind of how they're going to act. But for the next generation, it's different because you grow up and you have a whole multitude of competing experiences, and you don't really know what's right. So you do, what every child would do, you ask questions. Well, should I do it this way? Should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? And my parents' response, in a lot of ways, that they had 3 girls in a totally foreign country, and what they wanted to do was protect them. So they did their best to shut down the questions and say, no, you got to do it this way. You got to do it this way, or else it's going to be really, really bad. But see, that's not the case because, and as Dr. Jamal Badri was talking about, a lot of us come from not Islamic cultures, but Muslim cultures, which have just influences from other areas. And the interesting challenge about sort of the American Muslim community is kind of taking our different cultural things, which are not are not bad at all in and of themselves, but sort of taking our common values, taking different influences, and sort of forging a unique, American Muslim identity, and taking the best of the values that we have here. Because, our parents wanted to come here because this is a great place to be. Because American society has amazing values, because there's so much that we can learn from, finding the right way to sort of change and move forward. So the challenge really is for our next generation. It's about, if we want to create leaders that can do this and can sort of successfully navigate this, this cultural, kind of sort of confusion or just this formation, we need people that are going to do great things, that are going to be a voice for change and progress among us, and inspire us all to make improvements, big or small, in our own lives. And the way we do that is we engage them. We engage them in asking the questions and helping them find the right answers. So my understanding of leadership and how we create leaders is, like I said, for me, when I found fencing, there were 2 things. There was the motivation, there was the love I had for the sport, and then there was the fact that I was empowered by someone else to do it. And I think that if we help our youth, find and develop their passions, and then teach them that they can, in fact, go as far as they want, leadership is going to be the organic outgrowth of that. So, and when I talk about leadership, I don't talk about, making speeches or starting clubs. I really talk about, it's something as small as going against the grain and speaking out against something you don't think is right. It's about being willing to stand for something. So I think I just wanted to make a few quick points about leadership and really how we can empower our youth to become leaders. And the first one I wanted to make is that we have to teach them that in order to lead others, we have to start with ourselves. Because you can't be just be a leader. You have to be a leader in something. It's not a personality trait. Charisma is a personality trait, but leadership is when you really truly follow something and you really believe in it, and then other people naturally gravitate towards you. And they naturally gravitate towards you, and you create a fellowship because they see that you're really working towards something you believe in. We have to teach them, second, to find what they love and pursue it. And that can be as simple as, I really can't stress this one enough. We can help them, if you like something, pursue it. And then if you love something, you should absolutely pursue it, and you'll find a way to make it useful later. Because you will never work as hard, you'll never be willing to suffer as much, or you'll never be able to overcome as many obstacles in something that you're indifferent to. And then the third point I want to make, which people often forget, is that you have to teach them to dream as big as they can, but they have to start with small steps. When I first started fencing, my first goal was to beat someone, anyone, but I just wanted to beat one person. And if someone had just told me that, 2 weeks in, that if I ever wanted to do anything that was of worth in this sport, I was going to have to quit my job, move across the country, leave everybody I knew, I would have turned on my heels and walked right back out that door. It would have been terrifying. And it can be overwhelming if we set these dreams and if we set these expectations that they need to do, especially, in our communities, since we don't have, there's not a lot of room for doing things that are unconventional. And if we tell them, well, if you're going to do something unconventional, you better be good at it or else it's worthless, well, no one will do anything that's outside the lines. So, dreams are dreams, but you have to set achievable goals. You have to do, and this is where the motivation part comes back into it as well. Because if you truly love it, that will be your motivation, and you'll keep going, not because you plan to do X, Y, and Z huge thing of it, but you'll actually plan to do that because you love it so much, and because you've been working at it and getting towards that organically. And you won't be overwhelmed by unreasonable expectations. The fourth point I wanted to make is live every day with purpose. And again, sports are a fantastic training ground for that, because every day when you're playing a sport, you come in and you say, naturally, unconsciously it happens, what am I going to improve on today? How am I going to make myself better? Because again, you want to win, you want to do well. There's nobody telling you want to do well, it's just natural. So you think, okay, well, what am I going to change? You always have a focus coming in of how can I make myself better at this? And that's how we need to live our lives. You have to ask yourself, we always have to take time out to reflect. Am I leading a life I want to live? And how can I make it better? How can I get am I on the path towards where I want to be? And that brings me to my next point, is you always have choices. You always have choices. If I was on Wall Street, and there were definitely times where, maybe I had to work a 14 or 15 or 17-hour day, and then I didn't have obviously time for fencing or sleep or really anything else. And then I would think, well, I have no choice. I have to do it this way. You always have a choice. It's what I was prioritizing at that point was maybe financial stability or maintaining that job. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to be cognizant of the choices you are making. I was choosing at that point to prioritize financial stability. And you just have to make sure that the choices you're making are in line with your priorities, and just be aware of that. There aren't necessarily good or bad choices. They're just different choices, and you have to make sure that they're going to take you to where you want to be. And the last point I wanted to make about leadership is that don't ever forget the bigger picture. Life is too short, and there's too much unknown to spend it doing things that you don't enjoy. You can't obviously spend it only doing things that are fun, and you can't play your whole life away. But it's too short to spend it thinking, well, I'm just going to do this for 5 years, I'm going to suffer for 5 years, and then I'll have a good life, and then I'll make it work. You don't know where you're going to be in 5 years, but you have to spend it doing something you really truly care about. And that's the best way to find fulfillment for yourself and also be of use to those around you. There's really no burden on us greater than we can bear. The weight of the world is not on our shoulders. If somebody doesn't go to MIT, or if I didn't get to go to where I wanted to be, it really wasn't the end of the world, not for me, and certainly not for anyone else. find what you like, and pursue it, and then you'll find a path forward. You know, as you find a passion and you develop it, you'll find a way to make it useful to those around you and in your own life. And then I actually want to close very soon. The last thing I wanted to say is that you know, some of you have met me previously, and some of you haven't. But you know, I've not always been so determined. You know, even in my own faith, I started hijab recently. You know, and it's not that I was completely without faith, but I definitely neglected it. Just as many people do, I became busy with life. I went to college. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be this. I wanted to be that, and you know, successful, independent, and those were all fine. But that's just where the focus was for me. And then there was fencing, which I think it's all clear to you. I have somewhat of an obsession with. And I just kept going back, and I couldn't shake it. I didn't really know why, but I felt like I had to keep going back, and I did, and I made that choice to come here and keep fencing. And then when I came out here, especially because there was, you know, I didn't come out here with my family or my whole group of friends. I was alone a lot of the time, and when you're alone, it gives you a lot of time to reflect. And I started reflecting and wondering, well, you know, what am I doing here? Well, what if I don't get where I want to be? Especially, you know, when you're an athlete, there's this emotional roller coaster. And when you're an athlete that is, you know, I train with people easily that are half my age and get beat up by them, you know, and try to take it in as good grace as I possibly can. And I think, well, you know, what if I don't get to where I want to be? What if I never get that medal? What if, and then you start, because there are things that are out of my control. What if I got into a car accident tomorrow and then I broke my legs and that was it for me? Well, that's outside of my control, but there's still some value in being here. And I knew there was value because I kept going back. And that sort of questioning led me to ask the bigger questions, because it wasn't just about fencing, right? Anymore, it was about, well, what's the value of all of our pursuits in life? You know, and then people question, you know, all sorts of things. Well, why is it that some people win and some people don't? Why is it that some people have more resources at their disposal or more natural talent? And then really, it's about at the end of the day, I realized that the questions I'm asking are not about fencing at all. They're about our existence, about my existence, and sort of the larger purpose behind it. You know, fencing basically, it taught me to live with a purpose. You know, that every day, you know, to fight your nafs in pursuit of your goal. You know, fight, you know, feeling lazy or not wanting to go, or just, you know, feeling down on yourself and kind of overcoming that every day. But as a pursuit, it wasn't totally enough. You know, and nor was my education enough. So these are things that I've really fought for and sweat for and bled for, but they really have a purpose insofar as I use them for a good purpose. You know, inshallah, to lead a life that's, you know, a good deed, a life that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be pleased with, and a life where I can be of inspiration and a mercy to those around me. You know, a life, ladies and gentlemen, whose ultimate purpose is to live every single day with the knowledge that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching, and to Him will be our ultimate return.
Takbir. We have 5 minutes to 10 minutes for questions. If you have any questions, to address it.
Are you still with finance?
Yes, I am. I started working at a company called Precision Castparts a couple months ago. So I'm in the Treasury. I have to work to support myself and my dreams.
What's this company doing?
It's a manufacturing firm. That we make airline and power parts.
Any other questions?
Well, that was easy.
Musab, you have questions?
Were any of you able to understand me, or did I talk too fast?
No, very good.
Hussein, you have a question? Well, you want to show your clothes?
Can you show us how we use it against
Oh. He's my manager, I can't do that. I hired him for free, but there was nothing in the contract about being able to beat him up. You know, this is a fencing mask, fencing saber.
Can you show just one action like this?
Yeah, please.
It's
You can show some moves.
Go ahead. It's not sharp.
That really it helps when you touch
No,
somebody.
you can get bruised, but it's not sharp. It doesn't really hurt. But yeah, fencing basically happens on a 14-meter strip that's 2 meters wide, and you can only go back and forth. Competitors will start 2 meters apart, actually. Mary, would you like to help her demonstrate?
Yeah.
This is my teammate, Mary Barnett. She's a very, very good fencer. She's is it top 114 fencer in the country? Top three. Definitely the number one. Very long. When I said there are 13-year-olds that beat me up every day in practice, this is the one I was referring to. She's an amazing athlete, an amazing person, and so if you don't mind being put on the spot, if you just want to stand here, just like right on this line. Basically, competitors in fencing will start about 4 meters apart. There's a referee. Sophia, would you like to be our referee? This is my niece, Sophia. And Sophia, what does the referee do? Sophia is also a fencer.
The referee says who gets the touch.
Well, what's the first thing they do?
Ready, fence.
And then so we have these 4 meters between us, and it's really about the person that takes the initiative to make an attacking action. So for example, and then the referee kind of decides that, who made, so if Mary just starts running at me, and I just go flying back, and we both reach out, we both hit, it's electronically scored. If both lights came on, it would be Mary's point because she's being aggressive and I'm not. And that's for the referees to decide. So if we can, I can show, and we can go, we can shadow fence like a couple touches. Sophia, would you be so kind? Okay.
Ready, fence.
Which is what happens a lot in fencing, because we're both trying to gain the initiative. But then what?
Simultaneous.
Exactly, the simultaneous action. Nobody gets the point. But then you have cases where one person takes over right away. That's going to be you.
Okay. Careful.
Right. Make it work.
Okay.
Ready,
And that would be her point. And that's sort of, and you can watch fencing videos online. If you go to my website, I do have links to fencing videos, so you can watch it and kind of see how the sport flows. It's a wonderful, wonderful sport. Unusual, yes, but yes, you have a question.
Is saber fighting a natural extension from fencing with a foil?
Well, there are 3 different types of fencing. There's saber, foil, and epee. Mary and I are both saber fencers. And they all have slightly different rules. So you can't it's not an extension of it, it's a slightly different game, and there is overlap. So there are definitely skills that you learn from one that you use in the other. But what used to happen, like let's say in the 1920s and 1930s, when people were fencers, they could do all 3. But at this point, it's become so much more specialized. People really tend to just do one. Actually, when I say people only do one at a high level.
We'll take one more question, Brother Larry.
I'd like to know, who are the best fencers in the world? Is there a country that excels?
Well, actually, the U.S. excels. We do very, very well. In 2008, the women's saber gold, silver, and bronze medalists were all from the U.S. 2 of them were from Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
The flag bearer in the 2012 Olympics was our teammate, Mario Lagunas, and she's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and she's from here, from Portland, Oregon. Other countries that tend to do well are a lot of the Eastern European countries, Russia, Poland, also France and Italy. Those are countries that have historically claimed fencing to be, their sport.
When would you be qualified to go to Olympics?
Well, if I were to fence for Pakistan, Pakistan wouldn't have a team, so I would have to qualify. There are some qualifying events. I would have to be, I could either be highly ranked enough in the world, or I would qualify out of the Asia region, and that would be the goal. I would have to go compete internationally every season, get my ranking up, and then do well at a few tournaments to be able to go, and that is inshallah my goal.
Do you have
Yes.
any chance to represent Oregon or?
Well, I do. I mean, currently I represent the U.S. and I have represented the U.S. Internationally. And that would be wonderful. I mean, because I am Pakistani. There's so much that's a huge part of me, but I'm also American. I mean, there's no two ways around it. I just am. And if I were to make a U.S. team, it would be incredible.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would be just incredible, like shattering. But the thing is, for me, I want to make it about something more than myself. And I really feel like if I were to fence for Pakistan, I can spread this message to people that wouldn't hear it otherwise. Because maybe if they saw me fencing for the U.S., they would think what I thought, that I was somebody who was raised with this, and it was easy for me. But it wasn't. And if I can do this, then they can also do, not necessarily this, but anything that it is that they want to do. Yes.
So you change your mind, what might change your mind? Just go ahead.
Sorry. No, you went to Turkey as a fencer, so I was curious how soon the kids start fencing.
Mostly, I would say kids start around like 8 or 9, 10 years old. Is that around when you start?
At 9.
One final question.
Fencingforpakistan.com. Yes.
Question. Did the weight mean anything in this sport?
No, it's actually the only martial art with no weight or height classes.
Well, thank you everybody, and thank you very much. I want you to stay the table.